From the Cosgun Lab and the Bioengineering Media Lab at Georgia Tech, welcome to Lab Coat Conversations, where you too can join the discussion on the next academic breakthroughs. Join your host, Hector Torres, as we talk to Georgia Tech researchers. This episode, please welcome Dr. Temenoff. Okay, so we are here with Dr. Temenoff today. So her lab focuses on designing polymeric biomaterials for specific orthopedic applications. These can be synthetic and naturally based biomaterials that are used in conjugation with other biochemical and mechanical stimuli in order to promote the priming of stem cells and express a particular phenotype. So when I was doing my research on you, Dr. Temenoff, there wasn't a lot in terms of your history or past online. So I was wondering if you could tell our viewers anything about that, maybe about your previous research experiences.
Yeah, so I do have a unique last name, so whatever you find out about me by Googling is, for better or for worse, probably true. Just in terms of a brief summary, I started with my undergraduate education in biomedical engineering at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland. Got very interested in biomaterials at that time for cardiovascular applications, actually, and did 2 years of a great undergrad research experience there. That really got me hooked on research, and so I decided I wanted to get a PhD in biomaterials. I ended up going to Rice University and working with Tony Mikos, who still is, and at that time was really one of the few people working on regenerative medicine or tissue engineering for bone and cartilage applications. Got to get in on some of the early work in tissue engineering research, which was really exciting. So that was in the bioengineering department at Rice. Then I did a short postdoc in which I actually wrote the first edition of the textbook that I think we'll talk about in a minute in biomaterials, so it's undergraduate biomaterials textbook. And then I came here in 2005 to Georgia Tech Emory, also in biomedical engineering, and have been here ever since.
Great. Yeah, that's a phenomenal range of experience. So as you mentioned, you have a textbook that you wrote, and funny enough, I recognized the cover of it, and I was like, oh, I read that during my undergraduate experience. So I was wondering maybe if you could talk about what brought you around to writing that book, maybe your motivations, the things you included.
Yeah, so we actually just had a second edition published, but the first edition, if you look at the cover art, it's actually done by the wife of a faculty member here at Georgia Tech. So that has a bit of a Georgia Tech connection, that cover art. So it's very, very fun. It's actually the same artist who did the big mural in IBB. So if you look at the art, you'll see some similarities. So that was probably my favorite part of writing the textbook, was that I got to pick my own cover art and find an artist, and that was really, really fun. In terms of the content, which is of course the important part, what really drove me, so this was an opportunity that was presented to me actually while I was still in grad school. And so what drove me to do this with my, at that time, PhD advisor, was that I, as an undergraduate in biomedical engineering, this was very early on when there were very few programs that were offering biomedical engineering. So there weren't really any textbooks. So everything that I learned off of was some sort of combination of, at that point, scanned, photocopied materials from 3 different textbooks. And it wasn't, really for biomedical engineers. And while that was possible to learn, I really thought that a cohesive, comprehensive, one book that might bring together the more biological sciences and the more engineering aspects would be really helpful. So when given the opportunity, I could really see that there was a need for an undergraduate textbook in biomaterials, and I could do something that wasn't available for me and kind of give back to the community. And so that was really what motivated me to write that first edition along with my PhD advisor, Dr. Mikos. And then ultimately, 10 plus years later, we revised it because at this point, the biology has changed so much, and the analytical techniques and the power on what you can get out of a biological assay is so much more than it was when we originally wrote the textbook, that we felt like we should expose undergraduates to those aspects as well. And so we rewrote particularly aspects of the biology side of the textbook.
Mhm. So, in terms of biomaterials, what drew you to the field initially?
So I think for me, I was always interested in chemistry, and so I was trying to kind of maybe marry those interests along with my interest in helping others, and just that engineering perspective of kind of optimization. And I think all of those things together really led me to biomaterials within the umbrella of BME.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I read your textbook and I feel like the passion you have for biomaterials is really in that textbook. So it's a very good textbook. Highly recommend reading it. In terms of a little bit about your history, a little birdie told me that you had an extensive one with biomanufacturing. So I was wondering if you could tell us anything about that, and maybe previous projects in the field and what drew you to them.
Yeah, so I am currently the director of two centers headed at Georgia Tech that have to do with biomanufacturing. One is the Marcus Center for Cell Characterization and Manufacturing, which is really focused at Georgia Tech and has a physical presence at Georgia Tech. And then there's the broader federally funded NSF Center for Cell Manufacturing Technologies, or CMAT. But collectively, these are really about making better cells, and really making, through improved quality and improved scaling of these cells, we hope to reduce the cost and make these more affordable and accessible to all patients. And I think that what I've really been thrilled to be a part of and really honored is when we have so as a part of our CMAT center, we have patient advocates that come and tell us about their experiences with cell-based therapies, and it's really inspiring. And a lot of these are patients that have either themselves or have a family member that's undergone some sort of a cell-based therapy for cancer treatment. And these are patients that typically, would be not here today if it weren't for those treatments. And it's just really inspiring. And then there's, unfortunately, these are not available for everyone. They don't work for everyone. There's still so many questions about how to make these reproducible and working for everyone, getting them to areas of the country or the world that otherwise might not have access to them. And so, it's such an inspiring story, and it kind of calls out for engineers from all types of engineers to make a mark and to really contribute to this field. So that is what is exciting to me. It's, like I said, an honor to lead a center where we actually, really get to do something that will eventually help patients, and then talk to the patients that have been the recipients of those therapies, is really something that I kind of aspired to do as a biomedical engineer, but this is really bringing it to fruition, and very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Do you know if there's any projects on the way to make those treatments available for everybody?
Yeah, so everything that we do in both of our centers focuses either on scale or trying to characterize cells so that we can eventually build predictive models that will help decide if a particular cell might benefit a particular patient, or also to understand what quality is, so that if a cell is going through a particular production process, like scale up in a bioreactor, we want to make sure that all of those cells are of high quality when they come out, so that they can be used to treat patients. So within those centers, we have probably 10 to 15 collaborating faculty at Georgia Tech. And then, if we look broadly, really, somewhere between 60 and 80 collaborating faculty across the US. They each have individual projects that are falling in that umbrella. But we are, overall, there's a lot of technology that can be brought to bear in these questions.
Great. Yeah. That sounds like it really has like a wide range of impact. But focusing a little bit more on your research experience and your lab, are there any interesting projects that you can tell us about going on in your lab and maybe how they influenced society as a whole?
Yeah, so in my lab in particular, there's kind of two sets of projects. One is having to do with manufacturing of more potent mesenchymal stromal cells. And so these are bone marrow derived cells. They're adult stem cells, so to speak, that you can that have been used in a wide variety of applications, but we're focused mainly on musculoskeletal disease. So particularly in rotator cuff disease. So the rotator cuff tendon is often torn, as I'm sure you know, and particularly for athletes, but also as you get older. And as this occurs, you often lose the muscle that's associated with the tendon atrophies. And right now, there's not a good regenerative medicine or really any therapy that addresses the muscle loss. And so patients often lose range of motion. And so we are interested in repairing the tendon, repairing the muscle, and then there's actually also joint damage to the cartilage in the shoulder joint because of all of this. So those are kind of our three focus areas. And we have the idea is that if we can grow mesenchymal stromal cells that are more anti-inflammatory more consistently because of the biomaterials and other factors that we're growing them in and on, that we could potentially produce a set of cells that could be injected into the site of injury and help with the moving out of the inflammatory phase and into the repair phase for each of these tissues. So that is one kind of category of experiments that are going on in the lab. And the other uses the same general set of patients or set of questions that we're asking. So we're still interested in the musculoskeletal system. But here we're actually trying to use our biomaterials as drug delivery vehicles and deliver a variety of cytokines and anti-inflammatory proteins to try to, again, help the body jumpstart and in some case recruit its own stem cells to an injury site to help jumpstart that repair process, and so that we're not getting stuck in chronic inflammation, but we're actually moving towards regeneration of the tissues with the ultimate goal of restoring function for those patients.
Yeah, that sounds great. So then in terms of students who are looking for research or looking to enter into your lab specifically, do you have any advice or information that you could share with them?
Yeah, so in general, I take graduate students from all backgrounds. I've had people that are more mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, biomedical, some with a basic science background. And I really think that having all of these perspectives in the lab really gives us a greater diversity of thought and can really bring some new and novel approaches to our problems. So really encourage anyone to apply or come and talk to me if they're interested. Just in general, I think for graduate students or undergrads broadly, the things that I think that make a good researcher are some combination of curiosity, of course, and being humble. I'm always trying to do new things. Hopefully in graduate school, you're trying to do new things, but to kind of recognize that if it's your first or second time out, ask for some help, get a more senior person in the lab to give you some advice, I think really helps decrease the number of iterations and the frustration maybe in particularly trying new experimental techniques. But then to have that curiosity at the undergrad level, read a few papers from different labs of the students or the teachers that you have in class, and professors that you have, and for the graduate students, looking for not just immediately what's in front of you in the literature, but maybe some of those suggested papers that are always coming up that might be a little tangential to your field, but might open you up to some new ideas that could be used in your application or in your experiments. So I think those are some important attributes, and some things that I try to keep reminding myself as I go through as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So as we wrap up, I have one more question for you, which is where can people find you if they have any more questions?
Yeah, so my lab's in the Petit Institute in IBB, but definitely you can follow our lab on what used to be Twitter at Temenoff Lab, or definitely just email me and I'm happy to talk with you more.
All right, sounds great. Thank you so much for taking your time with us today and giving us all this incredible information.
Thanks so much. It was great to talk to you.
For sure. Thank you so much.